Everybody ready? All right. We appreciate y'all being here today. There have been some updates since the council meeting. As of right now, the city is withdrawing its request for the bond commission meeting tomorrow, and the meeting today is canceled. We are at an impasse with the state currently. We're hoping to work it out potentially in the future, but as things stand right now, the city of New Orleans, both the administration and this council, are going to move forward without the $125 million on the table, and we will be making cuts and adjustments to the budget accordingly. I think as far as speaking towards what that looks like, I'm going to call up our budget chairperson, Councilman Rizzo.
So a few things. Good afternoon, everybody. I know Mayor-elect Moreno has been working very hard on trying to first find as many revenue sources as possible. We had a meeting today with Sewage and Water Board where they owe the city $9 million. The expectation is we would get that money by the end of November. Councilmember Morrell has similarly pushed in the $9 million on the Cultural and Recreation Fund, so that's now $18 million that has been found. We're also sitting down to look at available ARPA dollars. There's between 45 to 46 million. We're going to have to make very hard choices about where that money is going to go and where those money is going to be pushed back in. And then the city has also told us that they are owed money from the state, from GOSEP, about $30 million or more for FEMA reimbursement as well. I use all those numbers because they are not insignificant cuts. They are multi-tens of millions of dollars. And the first order of business is to see every source of money, revenue that the city is owed as well. Obviously, the other thing that we are going to watch with a very close eye is all expenses now that the city is incurring, with instructions about how to limit all of those. And the real reality now is what is the money that we can get in as quickly as possible, and that will make decisions about the future, about where we head. So with that, I will turn it over to Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone for being with us today. So I just want to kind of put it out there on kind of what went down over the past several hours. As you all know, we put in some safeguards around the money that we were going to be requesting for a loan through the bond council to ensure that all the money, if we were able to get that loan, that there would be specific safeguards to ensure that the expenditures were being done correctly. Since that point, we started to get word coming from Baton Rouge that the Attorney General was really pushing on the City of New Orleans having a fiscal administrator come in if we were going to get that bond commission approval. And the more that we discussed this issue with different folks up in Baton Rouge, it seemed like that was like the hard line that apparently the Attorney General would not move away from. The City of New Orleans should not, and I will not stand for, having a fiscal administrator come into the City of New Orleans. That is essentially the state coming in and taking over the city. This is really like having a consent decree on city government. And from conversations we were having is that this fiscal administrator, should we move forward with this bond request, with this bond loan request, that this fiscal administrator would be coming in for an indefinite amount of time. So this was really opening the door for the state to come in and take over our city. Remember that a fiscal administrator is not just having an accountant come in and assist in finances. A fiscal administrator has the ability to approve expenditures, to approve and cancel contracts. Really, it's about somebody coming in to run the city. And so we all stand together, united, against having a fiscal administrator come in. We are more than willing to still continue to work with the state to come up with different options as far as oversight. Should we be able to continue moving forward in some kind of way, maybe in the next bond commission meeting, to still be able to get approval to get the loan, some other additional types of oversight measures that could make the state comfortable. But when it comes to a fiscal administrator, we all stand firmly against that. And I'll also say that our Congressman Troy Carter wanted me to make clear that he too stands firmly against that, as do members of our New Orleans delegation. Happy to take any questions.
Let's do WDSU first.
So
in a nutshell, what does this mean for city services, overtime, in general? What's the impact?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the impact on this is going to be detrimental. I mean, we're looking at canceling overtime for all city departments, including public safety agencies. This means, looking at all types of different contracts that we may have that may need to be canceled. This means that vendor payments will have to be delayed. I mean, this is going to have detrimental impacts on this, and this is really being caused because of the state really wanting to insert its control in the city of New Orleans. We have the right types of oversight measures. We work very closely with the legislative auditor to come up with oversight measures that we move forward today during our special council meeting. But unfortunately, that didn't seem to be enough for some leadership at the state level. We're still hoping that we can kind of work through this, and we plan on all, getting together next week to try to still work through this.
Did the former CAO put y'all in this spot?
Look, bottom line, and you all have covered what has gone on, but the way that all of this kind of got us here is that the city council passed a balanced budget at the end of last year where we had a healthy fund balance. All of a sudden, a few months go by and then things start to change. And then the CAO's office was saying one thing and the Department of Finance was saying something else. And then the city council took steps to see exactly what was really going on with our finances, and it turned out that we were $160 million in the hole. That's the way that it went down, and you make your assumption as to who's to blame.
Did the resolutions approved today move forward, Helena?
They did.
Or are they still needed?
They moved forward today in the special council meeting. All of them were unanimously approved, and I believe that I think all of them had all of the council members as co-authors.
But they're still on the table, they're still moving forward in spite of these new sources of revenue.
They already passed.
Yeah.
I want to be specific, and first of all, no disrespect to our leaders here who fought
Can you
hard.
take the
Take the
podium
microphone.
so we can hear you?
Who have fought hard to make sure we could perfect this agreement with the state. But specifically, I asked the CAO every question about whether we would be at this point. The CAO Montano in January. And for every question I asked him about the dire straits that some thought we may be headed to, he said no. So let's be specific. We may not want to call anyone out or throw anyone under the bus, but for every question we asked about this potential projected shortfall or revenue shortfall, or whether we would have to do some of the things that we're fighting to do now, he said no.
Yeah, I would add one thing to that point. I would remind you that when we met in January and February, the deficit was a projected deficit. As far as if we changed no behavior,
That's right.
the deficit would occur. And what we were told at those meetings by the administration, the CAO and others, was adjustments were being made to avoid a deficit. What we found when Mr. Threat became the CAO was that was the first time overtime was actually curbed, and that was in September. So we knew collectively from the January-February period that overtime was projected to create a deficit, but there was no effort by the administration to curb overtime. And I would simply add, it's important to note that through the last 3 years, overtime was not a line item in the budget. So from our perspective, the reason why overtime, which has probably gone over every year, was never on the front burner was departments, because of ARPA, were over budgeted. So what was happening for the last couple of years is they were all going over on overtime, but they were absorbing it within the departments. And because there's no requirement that when they true up, they tell us how money was being spent, the budgets just worked. This past year, there was no ARPA money in 2025, which is why, though the overtime behavior didn't change, there was no longer a cushion in the budget. Part of the reason why the resolution was passed today, asking the legislative auditor and inspector general to look at budgets from 2022 through now, is to figure out what in the heck happened going back to 2022. What were the practices and spending, and how did we get to this point? Because the reality is those ordinances today, coupled with the charter amendment that you guys all saw today, that deals with locking the budget when it's passed, is to prevent deficit spending. Because the reality, like the mayor-elect just said, we passed a balanced budget. the money that was spent that caused the deficit wasn't in the budget. Overtime was literally not in the budget, but personnel costs are the lion's share, anywhere from 60% to 2/3 of the money, and a large portion of the other part is missing budget estimates. We could have absorbed $45 million within our budget. We cannot absorb projected $160 million in deficit.
Is there any chance city workers will be furloughed now that we're not getting the $125 million?
Everything's on the table. I mean, the goal right now is we are curbing all unnecessary spending. We are clawing back money. The council fund is very important to every council member up here, but the goal is to make sure city workers and personnel needs are met first. So we're gonna claw back all the money we can. We're gonna see if that is enough money to make sure that essential services are funded and salaries are paid, because city workers do not deserve to go into Thanksgiving and Christmas with uncertainty, but they are first. Everything else is secondary. And to your point, if we can't find the collective revenue internally, it may lead to furloughs. Now, what I want to caution everyone with is we cannot furlough our way out of this, because every day of furlough, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, a day of furloughing the entire city is $1 million. So even if we furloughed everyone through the end of the year, it would not serve the deficit. It's only a portion of it. So the goal is to try and claw back all the money we can and to make sure that we can get essential needs met, but this will directly impact the city of New Orleans. Without the state coming together as a partner to solve this problem, curbing overtime for NOPD is problematic, because we have a smaller police force and they use overtime, that 12-hour shift, to make sure that our citizens and our visitors are protected. If we cancel overtime, which as of now, that's where we're moving, there will be less police, less fire, less EMS available as people are accustomed to.
If you cut back overtime with the NOPD, how long would that take? How long would that take?
It'd be immediate. I mean,
No, but what's the deadline of that?
oh,
Like how long
The
would
end date,
would
would
they?
it last?
How long would it last?
The goal would be, we are dealing with this year's problems. We're still working on next year's budget. So January 1st, the new budget would kick in, which would put us hopefully back on a good footing. But look at what we have now. We have Bayou Classic coming up. We have the All-State Sugar Bowl, a lot of other events taking place in that period. As of right now, in our communication with the administration and the CAO, the emails and letters are going out now explaining to everyone this is the reality currently, which is that overtime's going to be clawed back, unnecessary spending is going to be clawed back, and we're really looking at all contracts. So to your point, that would be through the end of the year, provided that we pass a budget that is coherent and that is balanced. That would kick in on January 1st. Now, that being said, you always run the risk when you have this level of clawback. There are officers, firemen, and EMS who may choose to go elsewhere, because when you claw back that overtime that they have been accustomed to, the challenge you have is that uncertainty in budget makes really qualified employees question whether or not they want to work in a city that has this kind of uncertainty.
Joe, what is the total amount of these additional funds you mentioned? And part of that, you said, was $45 million in ARPA funds. Are you satisfied that you'll be able to get that in spite of the government shutdown right now?
All right, so I'll go through the funds one at a time. Sewage and Water Board told us today that they are expected to get $9 million back from the state, from their Homeland Security. $1 million soon, $8 million should be coming in short order. Number two, the second $9 million, as Councilmember Morrell just mentioned, is from the cultural fund the city has put forward and as part of this year's budget, but we're going to hold that money back in order to go into the general fund to pay workers and making sure services are being achieved. Then the third one is the city is owed tens of millions of dollars in reimbursement on the Joint Infrastructure Recovery Program, the FEMA program that we all talk about. We are waiting to hear, Rob, two things. One, what is the total amount that the number is? We've heard 30 million, we've heard 40 million, we've heard 53 million. I don't feel comfortable saying what that number is until we've seen the receipts on it. And then the third and the last thing, the fourth thing, are ARPA dollars. There is about $45 to $46 million and unspent ARPA obligations. What Mayor-elect plans on doing is looking at all of those to see if there are some that are mission critical to serve both the residents and the workers who are here, and the ones that are not will be put back. So to sum all of that up, it could be as high, Rob, as $70 million between all four of those sources. It could be even higher than that. But we're trying to wrap our arms around every single source that we have, because we're no longer talking about raising $100,000 or $200,000. We're talking about making a huge difference with tens of millions of dollars.
So you're not at 160 million, which is the projected deficit,
No.
and that's the austerity measure.
Correct. And there's other money that should not have been spent either. Remember this, the council allocated $20 million for the school board settlement. That money has not been sent to the school board. So in theory, that $20 million ought to be somewhere because it was allocated but not spent. Moreover, we also, I'm looking at Councilmember Harris, made allocations for the affordable housing piece of charity. That was about $12 million. That money has not been allocated to charity. So I want to be careful here, because what I don't want to do is set an expectation that, oh, we solved the problem, it's all gone, there's nothing that's left. That's not the case. But the council is taking every proactive step that it can to look at every single source of revenue that is available and looking at getting all of those dollars back to offset this massive expense and deficit.
So could you give kind of a timeline on like next week there will be meetings to like claw back some of this money or pass resolutions to maybe redirect this money? Like what comes next as far as council and administration partnership here?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Good question. So Sewage and Water Board should be here by November. The joint infrastructure funds due to the city, they were saying some point this year, Blake, but is that next week or is that middle of December? We don't know yet. So I think we're trying to nail that down as quickly as possible. I think ARPA, assuming that we meet all the federal guidelines, can be done in very short order. So either not this upcoming council meeting, but probably the one after. We probably will introduce something if we can this council meeting, but maybe one after that. That's pretty quick. And then the money on the council fund hasn't even been allocated yet. So that we're sweeping that back in, basically as of today. Oh, yeah. And then obviously, as Mayor-elect reminded me, we also have the rainy day fund as well. And so if we have to unlock the $37 million that's in the rainy day too, we're going to do that as well.
And to your point, Blake, I want to be clear. These are the measures the council will take to unlock revenue. The cuts are coming from the administrative side, and our understanding, having met with a CAO threat, is the emails will be going out shortly regarding unnecessary expenditures, lack of overtime, potentially triggering the statutory requirements that we may have to shrink the workforce. Because as you know, under civil service, if we are going to let go or terminate civil service employees, they have to have notice. So all of those actions do not require council action. By our understanding, talking to the administration through CAO threat, is that he will begin that process probably today, if not tomorrow. So that will go out to all city employees, and they'll be aware that we are going into a more of an austerity posture.
JP, you had mentioned earlier about the contracts you have to look into concerning some of the upcoming events. For instance, Sugar Bowl.
Well, but the reality is that, and this is kind of one of those things that we as a city have taken on as a burden that is really not fair, which is that we don't get reimbursed for the overtime our officers do on these major events. We eat that cost, and the assumption is that the revenue generated from these events reimburses the city and creates profit. What we saw last year during Taylor Swift, and honestly, I want to give credit to NBA YoungBoy and Live Nation, they actually paid for the NOPD overtime during his event. The reason why we saw such a lack of revenue on the Taylor Swift concert was that we paid for all of the overtime, but when you look at our cut of revenue from an event like that, it was minuscule compared to the state. The state made tremendous profit, but we have to reimburse ourselves for the money we spend to make a wonderful environment for those type of events. To your point, Bayou Classic, we pay the overtime. The hope has been historically that all the people that show up and do the hotel rooms, that the city makes a profit, But what we found more often than not is that we break even. And so the challenge this year is going to be, as a city, we are not going to be able to provide the overtime that everyone's accustomed to and the police presence everyone's accustomed to.
How soon could the OT with NOPD stop?
It is, the administration has to make that determination. What we got from CAO threat today is that's going to happen today or tomorrow.
There are events that you were talking about, but those events also include the French Quarter. And so there's obviously a lot of overtime for public safety during that time. Was that included with what you were
Yes.
talking about?
Yes.
Yes. So, but to be clear.
And really to your point, one of the things that we're looking at that the chief actually recommended is what other cities are doing all across the country, and that is charging impact fees. And they really range, from everything from, you messed up some grass, to overtime costs for public safety and things like that. So that's something that this city does not have, but it is something that we are researching right now to create kind of the right ordinances and right fit for the city of New Orleans, so that moving forward for these major events coming to the city, that there will be these impact fees as well.
Your Councilmember Morell's point is important though, because historically, that's an age-old discussion. Does the city really benefit? Rob, you're familiar with those discussions 30, 40 years ago. So if we're gonna have a relationship with the state, go back and revisit the lost penny of the 4.5 that created the dome and built major infrastructure for the state to benefit and for private team owners, right? So at some point, hopefully, the state will enter into a discussion with Mayor-elect and leadership to talk about how it's fairer for the city of New Orleans, as well as the tourism community.
Should there
Couple more
be
questions, Joe.
should there be fiscal impact studies before the city agrees to host any other big events?
Well, many other cities are doing it. We've seen cities clash now with the fact whether they want to give in to a basketball team or a football team or a special event if it doesn't really add economic impact to the community. Look, we want all of those things, but I think there's an opportunity now to figure that out, Rob, and you can go back to councils and reports and events and stories that have been done about, do we adequately share from revenue? You remember when me and Mark Morial and Jim Singleton and Bob Tucker got kicked out of the governor's mansion about revenue share. So that effort's still there. So we want to work with the state, but let's revisit some of those core issues about how the city benefits while the state and everybody else does.
Are you all ruling out the possibility of maybe having to go to the bond commission before the end of the year, or is that still in the back pocket?
Look, we'll be back meeting with some state stakeholders next week, and we'll see what we can work out. There's another bond commission meeting on November 20th. Maybe there's something that can be worked out, but in the meantime, we can't just sit back and hope that everything's going to be okay, because obviously things didn't work out so well for us this week.
Are
Have
the
you
state
already
senators
formally
helping?
withdrawn the request for the bond?
I did not hear the question.
Have you already formally withdrawn
We
the request for
formally
the bond?
withdrew the request for the meeting this week. The actual request for potentially going back to the bond commission is still active, but unless something changes fundamentally in the state's position, the city's not going to move forward on it, because from our perspective, putting ourselves under state control for an indefinite amount of time, because let's be very clear, what we're requesting is the same type of line of credit we got during COVID, the city repaid. The bond commission in the state of Louisiana has no risk whatsoever in this request. It is a revenue anticipation bond, which we would pay back in January when we get our revenue for property taxes. So there's zero risk. The challenge is the state wants to put an indefinite consent decree over the city of New Orleans in exchange for us getting a bond we have to pay for, which will be repaid in 2 months. That is beyond payday loan. That is, I don't know what's one step beyond a payday loan, but that's well beyond a payday loan for us to pay back our loan. Right. Yeah, it's like the payday loan, we repay it, and they take our
And
house.
you
Like,
take your house.
Are any state senators helping?
the entire delegation is lock sync with us as far as trying to figure out a solution moving forward that does not require a fiscal administrator. What we did today was a yeoman's task of bringing the council and the mayor together to have a proposal that was fiscally sound, that met all the requirements that were let out to us. What happened in the interim between that meeting and now is that we were told, no matter what you present, unless you give us exactly what we want the way you want it, we will not accept it. And simply put, it is not in the city of New Orleans' best interest to be under state control indefinitely in exchange for a loan we would repay in January.
Can you say who
One
told
more
you
question,
that?
y'all.
Who told you that? The governor? Who told you that no matter what you all do, you're gonna be under fiscal administration?
We received word through numerous sources that the Attorney General had taken a position that was immovable, that unless a fiscal administrator was appointed, that she would not support any effort by the city to get the bond. And the Attorney General is one of the 3 people who sit on the Fiscal Advisory Committee, and it created an impasse where we did not see a path forward at this time.
All right, y'all, I think we're gonna wrap it up now.
Thank
So
you.
thank
Thank
y'all.
you.
If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Hey, JP.